You're listening to the Get Out and Drive podcast, fueled by AMD, with your hosts John Custom Car Nerd Meyer and Jason Old Car Guy Carr. We'll be bringing you gearheads everything you never wanted to know about cars and why they should be on the road and not in your garage. Are you ready to get out and drive?
That's awesome, John. I am ready for this new technology that we've developed here over at the Get Out and Drive podcast, fueled by AMD. My name is Jason Old Car Guy Carr.
And I am John Custom Car Nerd Meyer.
So we're taking a little bit of a turn in our podcast tonight, and we're taking something from Canadian news. 4 years ago in Nova Scotia, Canada, there was a police shooting, which was tragic. I believe there was 10 people that died, including a police officer, all stemming from a gentleman who dressed up as a police officer, an RCMP officer, and decorated his Ford Taurus that he bought at an auction as an RCMP car, based on the fact that you could buy or create certain stickers to do this to your fleet white Ford Taurus. And out of that, here we are 4 years later, and the news has come out that the RCMP will be, in the future, crushing all decommissioned police vehicles, police cruisers, cars, trucks, vans, snowmobiles, four-wheelers, you name it. Whatever the RCMP uses in the run of protecting Canada.
Now wait, I can't buy a used cop car no more?
Not in Canada.
How the hell?
So, as everybody knows, that when a cop car becomes decommissioned, it goes to government auction. Guys like you and me, John, kids buying their first car can go to these auctions and get a steal of a deal on what used to be rear-wheel drive V8 sedans that you could beat the ever-loving piss out of and still have a very reliable car. And as of right now, in Canada, that's a thing of the past, John.
Now you have to understand, it's not just for the kids and the cool car guys and everybody, because those vehicles have got severe duty parts on them. And you know who is the 100% entity that's going to hate this? Taxi cab company.
Absolutely.
Because all of the police cars, severe duty cars, all that stuff, they all went down and got auctioned. A small amount of them went into people's hands, you know, the private hands. But a lot of them, especially where I am in St. Louis, you know what happens? They get flipped into taxis. And the taxi service just loves these severe duty cars, whether it's a van, SUV, rear-wheel drive, Tahoe. I don't care what it is. You can't kill those things. And they get painted up whatever color a taxi is in your local town. And man, if you're telling me that's going to happen in Canada widespread, that's bad on the industry.
Well, and I think that it is. Like, I'm a big Crown Vic guy. I own 3 of them. My young fella's got a couple of them, and we are repurposing a couple of these old ex-cop cars into Hoonmobiles, if you want to call them, just things that you can beat the crap out of, that you don't have to worry about breaking. And if you do break, well, we've got a parts car. We've got parts. They're readily available. And Crown Vics, as a rule, they would run through any police service to between 100 and 120,000 miles. Once they miled out, they would go to auction. They would get sold. Like you said, taxi companies would buy these things. They would throw another 200,000 to 300,000 miles on this thing before, depending on where you were. If you're up in the Northeast and the Salt Belt, you know, they would rot away in 10 years. They're just done. But these were great first cars for young people. They were great project cars for the hobbyists. They were especially the Grand Marquis, Town Cars, Crown Vics. They're great for, get out there in that demolition derby, beating and banging, rear wheel drive, V8 power, and they were just a blast. And John, to top it off, you bought them cheap.
They were pretty cheap, and it's very surprising to me that this is going to happen. And I know you say that it's going to happen, or they're instituting this plan. Will it be retroactive? Will they not let any previously sold police cars be registered? I mean, how deep is this going to go?
I'm not sure. I think it's basically is pick a point and start is how
Okay.
it will work. So in essence, the two police cars that are in our possession currently, they're ex-police cars.
hmm
I don't think will be affected. But for instance, moving forward, you certainly just won't be able to go and buy one. And the plan that they currently have in place is to store them, which costs taxpayer dollars to store these things. And in based on a video that we will leave linked in the show notes, based on this video from Global News in Canada, it's costing millions of dollars a year just in storage for these items. When in retrospect, if they were auctioning them off, there's no storage fees. There's auction, they're gone. Somebody takes possession. If they're worried about cop cars being transformed back into cop cars by civilians, then there's got to be plans in place for that. You see a car drive by that's got a stars and stripes on it with serve and protect and lights. Okay, there's something that should be wrong. That should be illegal. But for those of us who want to strip them down, put a little bit of an exhaust, set of fancy wheels on it, and just have a good daily cruiser, that should be on us. That should be our decision to do. It's going to cost them a fortune to implement this crushing plan. Will they get scrap value out of these vehicles? Well, that's all they'll get. $300 or $400 a car, maybe. But they could be salvaging parts off these things as well. We all know when the Ford Crown Vics changed their body style in 98, from 98 to 2011, pretty much everything on those cars was the same on the exterior. So you get a bad bumper, a bump, or a header panel, or a door, or headlight that got broken, you've got an endless supply of used parts in your own inventory. I don't get it. I don't get where there's certainly no savings here over one incident of somebody, pretending to be a police officer.
Yeah, that's quite a knee-jerk reaction for one incident. I could see if it was a constantly repeated thing and people were doing this, and not to discredit what they're doing, but trying to start and go somewhere. But you can take any white SUV and put numbers on it, and anybody will think it's a police car.
Yep. You can take a black one, paint it white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Let's take a look at some of the instances that we know of where our good friend Travis Bell went to the auction, bought himself a Florida State Trooper car or a state police car, and it was fully lighted, fully deckled, and that is precisely how he bought it at the auction. There's videos over on VinWiki talking about the entire story. I encourage you to go over and listen to that, because he runs into the law and they're trying to accuse him of impersonating a police officer when in fact the car is exactly how he bought it.
It's a sticky situation. It really is. I've seen quite a few cars in the Midwest that were Ford Taurus, that type, that are look like to me Indiana state, that they're brown and tan, and it's still painted that way, and it doesn't have door guards. It is everything. There's the plug on the quarter panel where a whip antenna was. It is 100% a police car.
Yep. They pulled the stickers off of it. That was it. And, anybody, if they really wanted to impersonate a police officer, there's lots of ways they can do that without simply going to the auction and buying an ex-police cruiser. I found it to be, and again, we're not making light of the situation that happened 4 years ago in Nova Scotia. That's not the point of this podcast. The point is, we're talking about a knee-jerk reaction that affects a entire future of A, used cars, B, auto enthusiasts, but C, most importantly, one of the biggest things we talk about here in the Get Out and Drive podcast is the youth who show an interest, who are trying to get into the car enthusiast genre, getting into their first car, building their first hot rod, whatever that happens to be. Is someone's life more important? Absolutely. But we're not, we're looking at a broader picture here of how bad is this situation? Is it because of this one situation that they're making the knee jerk? Sounds like it to me. The US is 10 times the population of Canada, and we don't hear of that happening in the US. Cars are still being sold at auction, police cruisers, trucks, vans, SUVs, heavy equipment, four-wheelers up here that they still use snowmobiles to patrol a lot of the trails to keep, to ward off the drinking and driving while you're on a snowmobile. So I don't know. I just find it a little bit far-fetched to think that, if you're going to solve shootings, or just because you ban a gun doesn't mean you're going to stop shootings. The Get Out and Drive podcast is always looking to support the next generation in the auto industry and hobby through our What Drives Youth initiative.
Our friends at AMD know that younger enthusiasts are out there building vintage cars and trucks while incorporating modern comforts. AMD Restoration Parts maintain that classic look needed for retromod builds.
If you are a younger enthusiast working on a build using AMD parts, we want to hear from you. If chosen, you and your build will be featured in an upcoming What Drives Youth segment on the Get Out and Drive podcast. Visit getoutanddrive.com to let us know about your build or tag us in your build posts on social media. Visit autometaldirect.com and use promo code GOND for a 10% discount exclusively for our listeners for a limited time. AMD, built for enthusiasts by enthusiasts.
Now think about what would happen and how the world would be without the most well-known ex-police car.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to tell our listeners, you certainly know. I mean, what do you think is the most in pop culture? What do you think is the most popular previously police car?
It's got to be I believe it's a Dodge Monaco from the Blues Brothers, the Bluesmobile.
Oh, yes.
This thing has been duplicated, replicated multiple times in different iterations by different vehicles, by different people. But John, as far as I'm concerned, there is only one. And that is our good friend Brian Scanlon, who is the at official Bluesmobile over on Instagram. You guys go over and follow him, and you can learn everything you need to know about the Blues Brothers Bluesmobile, which was it had the cop brakes, the cop suspension, the cop tire. Like, it was just everything about it. And that's kind of the whole thing at the gist of that movie. And I do believe we have a clip of that. Paul's going to play that for us.
It's got a cop motor, a 440 cubic inch plant. It's got cop tires, cop suspension, cop shocks. It's a model made before catalytic converters, so it'll run good on regular gas. What do you say? Is it the new Bluesmobile or what? Fix a cigarette lighter.
Do you like it?
Do you like it?
No, I don't like it. Fix a cigarette lighter.
And the Blues Brothers movie has been made famous for more than just the replication of an old cop car. But as far as I'm concerned, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest police chase car crash movie in history. Am I close?
It destroyed the most 74 Dodge Monacos that I've ever seen in one place. That's for sure. I think it's probably coming in second, would be gone in 60 seconds, the first one, but it's not that many. The same car,
A little bit bigger budget than gone in 60 seconds, right?
a little bit bigger budget. Yeah, they bought hundreds and hundreds of cars. I think they used like 9 or 10 or 13. There's all sorts of different numbers of the Bluesmobile vehicle, and none of them survived.
The Get Out Drive podcast is all about survival. It's all about maintaining, making sure that the next generation of car enthusiasts, these young people, have something affordable to jump into. When we were kids, we were looking at box Chevy cars, Caprice Classics, Impalas, or whatever you want to call them back in the day. Ford.
Super popular is the Fox body Mustang.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, those are just known for being incredibly fast and light notchback coupes as ex-Florida State Patrol cars.
Yep. And I think one of them rolled across Barrett Jackson or Meekum, one of those auctions just recently, and went for ridiculous dollars.
Yeah, it had a few changes from stock to make it a little easier to drive, a little more fun to drive. But to the average person walking up, that was a really good car.
And, where else can you go pay $1,500 for a V8 rear-wheel drive with 250 horsepower? Mm-hmm. Right? You go to the government auction, you buy yourself a Crown Vic, or you buy yourself a Ford Explorer.
The poster is right behind me, advertising the Crown Vic. The Old West, you get a badge and a gun and a horse. Now you get a badge, a gun, and 210 horses.
Yeah.
And that's a police cruiser Crown Vic advertisement from the Ford dealership.
Yeah. So, the whole premise of getting rid of a whole complete generation or opportunity for the next generation to jump into this is, from a car guy perspective, is absolutely asinine. But from a taxpayer standpoint, that seems to me like an astronomical waste of taxpayer dollars. The number of police cruisers that the RCMP, if you guys don't know and aren't aware, the RCMP in Canada is a national police force, much similar to what would be maybe equivalent to the FBI in the US, but more police based, meaning they'll still pull you over on the highway for speeding or charge you for, whatever. They wear police uniforms, but they stretch from coast to coast. So, every province and every territory has RCMP policing what they do. Depending on where you are, maybe you've got big Ford F-150 four-wheel drive trucks. Down here where we are, they use primarily Ford Explorers. But the whole idea is they pay big bucks to buy these things from the manufacturer. They pay even bigger bucks to upfit them for the police service. And then when everything's all said and done, they're just going to crush them. Seems a little unfair.
It does. And we certainly promote recycling.
Here's a take, John, for all those people who hate the hot rod industry, or who have things to say about how bad they are for the environment and how they're polluting and this and that. Wouldn't you think, just for 1 second, that recycling an old cop car by selling it to somebody who can continue to drive it, rather than it becoming landfill, would be much better for the environment than that alternative? I mean,
I would think so, but because to create something takes a lot more carbon footprint than it does to reuse something.
Yeah,
that's in my eyes. I'm not a global scientist.
I agree. We've had this conversation plenty of times before, and I'm comfortable bringing it up again because it just seems to be such a hot topic these days. Oh, yeah. Is for me to drive my 1990 Suburban that gets 15 miles to the gallon and burns a quart of oil every 2,500 miles, This thing is better for the environment. Now, hear me out. Before you get mad, you start throwing things and shutting off your radio, hear me out. Here's your reminder to support the companies that support your right to get out and drive.
Racing Junk has been a longtime supporter of our podcast. You may have seen us podcasting live from the Racing Junk booth at SEMA and PRI. Racing Junk is the world's #1 racing and performance marketplace. You just can't beat their free classifieds filled with cars, parts, antiques, trailers, and more.
Be sure to speed over to racingjunk.com to find those parts you've been looking for, or to list the stuff that's taking up space in your garage for free.
What drives you?
This Suburban is better for the environment than going out and buying a brand new Tesla or electric Ford Mustang Mach-E or a Ford Lightning pickup truck. I'll tell you why. Because this truck has been around for 35 years. It will be around for another 35 years. And starting today, there is 0 carbon footprint to build again. It's already here.
Mm-hmm.
So to go and create that carbon footprint to build an electric vehicle to replace my 90 Suburban that gets 15 miles a gallon, burns a quart of oil, surely it's in a better position carbon footprint wise for all you globalists, global environmentalists who think that everything should be electric. I think I'm doing the world a better favor by driving that continually than going out and buying a 3,000-pound battery pack.
Yep. That's exactly what I think. I mean, we drove the Jeep Cherokee across the country.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. You guys, you went to, back in 22, you drove it from St. Louis to Las Vegas and back.
Mm-hmm. And back. Yep.
2 years ago, we took my 77 C10 from where I am in Canada on the East Coast. We drove it 3,000 miles to Atlanta, Georgia and back, 3,200 miles actually.
Mm-hmm.
And, last May, I bought my Suburban down in Wichita, Kansas. Tommy and I, we bought that, drove it clear home. I picked up John along the way in St. Louis, and we did 2,000 miles in that thing. Did it burn a lot of gas? Yep, it sure did. But guess what? I can buy a lot of gas for $100,000 to replace that with our electric vehicle. So I'm sorry. I'm sticking with my old stuff. Less computers, less to go wrong. Fix it on the side of the road. You don't need a dealership. And not to mention the fact that we have a great network of friends and family of the Get Out and Drive podcast, that phone call and a little bit of help is just around the corner. So no matter where we are in this great, I say great country, Canada as well. We've got friends up here too. So we're trying to plan a road trip for 2025. As we mentioned in our last podcast, we're thinking it may be back to Atlanta again. In Dale Jr., my Suburban this time. So if you guys are looking at being a part of the Get Out and Drive family fueled by AMD, and you're in the Atlanta area, you want to meet up with John and I, might be an opportunity to see us in person and get to know some of the guys over at AMD who are very gracious enough to sponsor this podcast as well.
Well, Jason, I can tell you one thing I'm going to do before this happens down here in the United States. I think I'm going to look around, try and find a Crown Vic or a Tahoe or something to buy. I mean, I have to.
Yeah.
I'm not buying a new car, that's for sure.
No, and I think that we're in a position too, economically, in both countries, coming off this hiatus of, overinflated everything, that when it comes time to save $1 or $2, we've got to look at that in the form of, used cars and how we can find the biggest bang for our buck. And sometimes that just happens to be in a used fleet police cruiser of some sort, that, buy one of them for a couple $1,000 and still put another 150,000 miles on them, trouble free. And I think that anybody that's listening to this podcast today, whether you're in Canada or the US, if you're in Canada, your time is limited. We're at the point now where I believe we're heading down a road of, recycling these old ex-RCMP fleet vehicles is becoming a thing of the past. If you don't have yours now, you likely will miss out. the U.S., hopefully, they see past that. They see the value in recycling vehicles and keeping them on the road, and not sitting in a storage compound somewhere, collecting dollars and dust. John, wasn't there something in the U.S. several years ago where perfectly good cars were destroyed as well? Something.
I think it was around 2009. I know it was during Obama administration. It was a very short period of time. The people in the U.S. know it's called Cash for Clunkers. Everybody, Hot Rod Magazine, everybody got on the front page and they said, they're taking away the hot rods. They're taking away the cars. They're taking away everything. And we quickly learned that that's not true. It was supposed to only be cars that were from a certain year. I think it was 10 to 15 years prior than the date that it was initiated, that you had to have your car licensed, you had to have it registered, it had to be a running vehicle, all sorts of things. I think, and I'm sure our listeners will help us out, but I think it was $3,500 or something off of a new car, and all sorts of things. It didn't help anything. So many people circumvented the rules, and everybody thought it was a great thing at the time. Cash in your car that's a emissions hog, and get a brand new car. And you go to the dealership, get a brand new car, and all the dealerships around the country had dumpsters out front with a Camaro or something sticking out of the front of it, or some kind of beautiful minivan, or some kind of conversion van, and you could bring your perfect good car in there and drop it off and buy a new one.
So what were they doing with these cars, John? So, to my understanding, like, perfectly good cars were sent and destroyed.
They made sure, and you can still look up the VIN numbers online of the whole system. You were supposed to bring the car in there, and they get it in the program, and the dealership that you would trade the car in with put glass, poured that in the engine. There was a concoction that they were supposed to pour in the engine and run it until it quit by itself. And then they were not allowed to have that car resold as a usable vehicle. It immediately got the engine pulled out. Pieces were supposed to go to scrap and go to recycling. That all sounds great, right? But secretly in the back lot of the dealership, and I've heard this from a lot of people, a lot of good cars, just, this one's not in the system. And they got sold out the back door. And when all was said and done, that short couple of months in 2009, I don't think it made a dent in anything. It was supposed to help emissions. It was supposed to help get people, economic hardship people, get cars, new cars, help dealerships, everything. And I think when everything came out in the wash, it didn't help anything at all. Well, I'm leaving. I'm going to go. I've got stuff to do. I'm going to go look at buying a Tahoe or a Ford Taurus. I got to go.
Yep. Well, you go do that. I'm going to go work on my Crown Vic. And we thank you guys for tuning in. We hope that you understand the situation that we're talking about. Like I said, one more time, not making light of the situation that happened 4 years ago in Nova Scotia. Our hearts are with those people who lost family. As we move forward, we want to make the best of the car community. And we believe truly that recycling these older vehicles is the way to do it, and not just sending them to the crusher. So appreciate you guys listening. We will see you guys in the next podcast.
Cruise on over to our website, getoutanddrive.com, for all the info you never wanted to know about our podcast. Hit us up on our listener hotline, be the first to know what's happening, get industry news, and grab your Get Out and Drive merch. Connect with us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow us on X at Get Out and Drive Pod.
What drives you?
And now you know the rest of the story.
See, you learn a lot of stuff listening to Get Out and Drive podcast.